Hi guys, welcome back from the ad break. So I hope you are now refreshed, you've had a glass of water and you are ready to roll. Right now guys, we're going to look at some quadratic equation, we're going to look at quadratic formula that is, and we're going to look at some completing the square. I know that completing the square is one of the topics that gives you guys quite a challenge, but then you have me today and we're gonna sort that out. So let's just have a look at what exactly is it that completing the square is all about. But before that, we're still gonna take out a square root on both sides just to see exactly what happens when I take out a square root, right? One thing I need to mention though before we continue is, remember that when you have a squared, the idea is that your answers need to be 2. Right? If I have x squared, that tells me that my solutions will be 2. If I have x on its own, then my solution will be 1. So please understand that. And then at the later stage, you know, if it's x cubed, then I have 3 solutions. So the exponent, the leading one, always tells you how many solutions you have. That will really be important to what I'm going to say next. Let's have a look. So right now, if I have what we call a quadratic equation, to solve a quadratic equation by taking the square root, right? Taking a square root is always a plus or minus situation. Let me make an example. If I have x squared is equals to 4, right? Let's solve this using factorization, which we just did. This is going to be x squared minus 4 equal to 0. Difference of 2 squares. Then I open 2 brackets. X minus 2, x plus 2 equal to 0. Then you can see one x will be a positive 2, the other x will be a negative 2. What am I saying? There's a plus there, there's a minus there. Hence, it's always plus or minus. So if I just say x squared equal to 4 and I decided to take out a square root on both sides, this will be the same as x is equals to plus or minus 2. But I just showed you how to then make sense of that using factorization. If the equation is in the form of x squared equal to c, like the one that I did, then you know that your answer is always going to be plus or minus the square root of c. Similarly with what I have, or x plus or minus k squared is equals to the c there. It's the same concept that you'll have a plus or minus situation. Now, when we talk about completing the square, to summarize what completing the square is all about, this is to write a quadratic equation in terms of a square equal to a constant. What do I mean? What I just spoke about. In the form of x squared equal to c. This is a square and this is a constant, right? Or x plus k all squared equal to c. This is a square and that is a constant. That's what completing the square is all about. And then you can take out a square root on both sides and then solve for your x. But we'll talk about that. Let's look at the very first step. I'm going to give you the equation ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0 because I want to make it as standard as possible. Not just to make it for a specific question, because a lot of people think that then it must always be just x squared plus 2x plus 3. No, it can be just general. The first thing that you need to always do is to make sure that the coefficient of x squared is 1 by dividing everything by a, right? So if I divide everything by a, this will be x squared, this will be b over ax, and this will be c over a. And then 0 divided by a will just be 0. Then my step 2 will be you add or subtract the constant to both sides so that the equation is in the form of. You call this, I know that you have a word that you like so much, transposing, right? Remember what I said. This is going to be x squared plus b over ax plus c over a equal to 0. what does this step mean? It just means that take this to the other side. That's what you normally call it, right? You transposing the value. That's the language you guys normally use when you're talking about this. Then it becomes a minus c over a. And then you go to my third step. The third step is what makes completing the square to be what it is. What do I mean? Add the square of half the coefficient of the x term on both sides. What is that? Let me go back. My coefficient of x is b over a. So it will be b over a. Firstly, you half it, and then you square it, and then add it on both sides. So this will be the same as b over 2a, all of this squared. So that's what I mean. And then you take this thing that I have here and add it on both sides. That's what step 3 says, right? So I'm adding it here and I'm adding it there. Now let me explain why you are adding it, guys. You are adding it because remember in mathematics, as soon as you introduce something new, it must be such that that thing can be reversed. For it to be reversed means you are not changing the equation. Because if you just say, let me add it to the left, the equation is no longer what I gave you. Then it's a different thing altogether. It's the same as that concept of rationalizing. You remember, what you do at the top, you must do at the bottom. What you do on the left-hand side, you must do on the right-hand side. It's just to maintain balance so that you don't change the equation. Because as soon as you introduce something that changes the equation, already you are lying. I'm not going to say you are wrong, you are lying, because you know the truth, but you decide not to give me the truth. So please do pay attention to that. Now, the last one will be factorize the left side as a square of a binomial, right? So if I go back to this, if I factorize this, I will take whatever that is in squared there, you put it in brackets and then square it outside. That's just a short way of explaining it. So if you factorize the left-hand side, it will then be that. Then the right-hand side, if you simplify it, it will then give you that. But you know, from here you need to take out a square root on both sides. If you take out a square root on both sides, remember, it must be plus or minus. I did tell you that. Now, why am I making you understand this? Look at this. If I have x plus q all squared is equal to r, this is the same as x plus q equal to plus or minus the square root of a. That's very important, guys. This plus or minus is really, really important because it's what makes you get full marks, right? If you don't have the plus or minus, then you will get your 3 out of 4 marks because for the last answer, it would then be wrong. Now, the solution of the equation are normally given by the solutions rather. The formula x is equals to minus b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. You know this is a quadratic formula. You do not need to then cram this formula, guys, please. You just need to know how to apply it because it's going to be there in your information sheet. So make sure you just understand it. Because of this plus or minus, you will have 2 solutions. One with the plus and one with the minus, right? So that's what makes it to be 2 solutions. Because I said to you, squared always tells you that you must have 2 answers, not 1. As soon as you have 1 answer, you have done something very wrong. Now let's solve this by the form of completing the square, right? I said always make sure the coefficient of x squared is 1. If it is 1, then you skip step 1. You go straight to step 2. So this will be x squared minus 4x equal to negative 2. That's my step 2, right? Let me just say as 2. And then step 3 was you add half of the coefficient squared, right? So that will be x squared minus 4x plus negative 4 multiplied by 1 over 2 all squared equal to negative 2 plus minus 4 by 1 over 2 all squared. And then you can then do the necessary things. So simplify it first quickly. Becomes minus 4x plus negative a half multiplied by negative 4 will then give me a negative 2, and then squared. This will be equal to, this will be negative 2 plus negative 2 squared is just going to be 4. I've already simplified it on the right. And then if you go further than this, it will then be x minus 2 all squared is equals to, remember on the right hand side it will be minus 2 plus the 4, which will give me positive 2. Square root both sides, this will be x minus 2 equal to plus or minus the square root of 2. Then my solutions will then be x is equals to 2 plus square root of 2, or x is equals to 2 minus square root of 2, right? Firstly, it's me taking that a negative to that side, which becomes a positive. That's where the 2 comes from, and then the plus and the minus. Let's look at another example. Solve for x by completing the square, the same concept. But here you can see, firstly, I must make sure that the coefficient is 1. So this becomes x squared minus 3 over 2x minus 7 over 2 equal to 0. Then it becomes x squared minus 3 over 2x equal to 7 over 2, right? And then you apply what makes the completing the square. X squared minus 3 over 2x plus negative 3 over 2 multiplied by 1 over 2 all squared. What you do on the left, you must do on the right. So it's 7 over 2 plus negative 3 over 2 by 1 over 2 all squared. Then let me quickly look at what I have here, and then I will simplify it on the next page. So it will then be x squared minus 3 over 2x plus, in the brackets here it's supposed to be minus 3 over 4. I hope I have that right. Squared equal to, let me just verify, minus 3 over 2 by half is negative 3 over 4, yes. Therefore it will be 7 over 2 plus, if I simplify this, it gives me 9 over 16. And then you can then do what is the completing the square. Minus 3 over 4. All of this is squared equals to, this I must make sure that the denominators are the same, right? If I do that, this will be multiplied by 8, that will be multiplied by 8. And then you can then simplify it further. So it will be 7 over 2 plus 9 over 16. Then you can take out a square root on both sides, which will then give you x minus 3 over 4 equals to plus or minus the square root of 7 over 2 plus 9 over 16. Then you can simplify it from there. Now, this one, as soon as you see the word, leave your answer in simplest said form. They are simply saying use the quadratic equation. You can even use completing the square, but if they don't specifically say by completing the square, it means that you just need to use a quadratic equation. So firstly, my a value there is 1, my b value there is minus 3, my c value there is 1. So it will be x equals to minus b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac. All of this is divided by 2a. And then you can then simplify this. Minus the b we said is minus 3, so it will be negative 3 plus or minus the square root of minus 3 squared will be then 9 minus 4 into the a value will be 1. The c value will be also 1. Not negative, right? Let me quickly remove that. So it will just be a positive 1. And then you can then work this out all over, by the way, 2, because it's going to be 2 multiplied by 1. Then if I simplify this, it will then be x is equals to positive 3 plus or minus 9 minus 4 times 1 is just 4, right? So 9 minus 4 is 5. So this is square root of 5 over 2. That's your answer. Then you can separate the plus and separate the minus. Then it will give you your answer. The last one now quickly will then be this one, right? This is my A, that is my B, that is my C. Here, what do you need to do? You need to then use what you call the quadratic formula, but now you need to press your calculator and make sure that you round it off to 2 decimal places. So this will be minus 2x squared minus 4x plus 1 equal to 0. Then you can just maybe get rid of the negative there. It becomes 2x squared plus 4x minus 1 equal to 0. Then you go straight to the formula. X equals to, the B is a positive 4, so minus 4 plus or minus the square root of, I will have 16 there, minus 2, right? Minus 4 into 2, sorry. And then divided by 2 into the 2 there, which will simplify to minus 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 minus 8 will be 8 over 4. Then you press your calculator there, it will give you 2 decimal places when you separate them and round it off to those. So I hope that makes sense, guys. So this is mainly when a question cannot be factorized, right? The equation cannot be factorized. You can either go to completing the square or go to the quadratic equation, and your life will be easier. But even questions that can be factorized, you can just use a quadratic equation. Only if the question did not say factorize and they just said solve for x. But if they say solve for x and you use a quadratic equation, I might get wrong. So you listen to the instructions. Guys, I hope you are still having some fun. Let's take a quick ad break and I'll be back with some more.